Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a replay actually from about a year ago. This is a replay I remember where Chovy had 12 Cspm as Jace in solo queue without TP. So very, very impressive. And I think that's like one thing about mid lane fundamentals is that they're pretty timeless. You know, they're always relevant. And Chovy's a player with very, very strong fundamentals, especially in farming. And this is a VOD that I remember really stuck out to me. So there's some runes on the screen here, but we're going to be mainly taking a look at how Chovy gets 12 Cspm in solo queue. It's pretty difficult in solo queue to actually get 12 CSPM while pressuring the map, and that's something that Chovy's quite good at, because if you just AFK farm the entire game, you know, you can get 12 CSPM, but actually having impact, you know, doing things efficiently and still having high CS is really, really important. So we're going to definitely see a lot of that in this game. Now, things that do make getting like really high CS a lot easier. One, having strong side laning. Two, having a lot of sustain. I think these two things do help quite a lot. The sustain means that you can stay on the map longer than normal, so you'll probably see him building some lifesteal this game. And also, like, if you have strong side laning, like as a champion, it means you can like push and be a bit more aggressive in the side lane and take a few more camps. So, you know, champions like Ryze and Lucian can definitely do this better. That being said, there are some champions that, you know, even with like relatively poor side laning, if they have enough wave clear, they can actually make sure to get like a ton of CS anyway, just because they can quickly go to the side lane, delete a couple waves, and then come back mid. So in this lane, Jace versus TF, we're not going to focus too much on the laning phase, but pushing in early, hasn't looked for any big trades yet. Going for a 3-wave crash, which is very, very standard, especially in a matchup where you have control over the lane. And now one thing that you will kind of see is that he always tries to stay, like, if he can, reasonably close to the CS to last hit it. If you've watched my farming guide, you would know that the closer you are to CS, the easier it is to CS them, obviously. Places the ward, doesn't really need too early wards against Diana, not really a strong early game ganker. And he also has cleanse as well, so they don't really have much threat on him overall. So sees Diana on the Krugs, I believe, and is going to feel pretty comfortable. Could have this come back to him, but going to keep freezing it. Going to keep pushing it. I think that's kind of good to do, honestly. It's like, you can, in a matchup like this, where you got two farming junglers, it's actually like reasonably likely that they can test each other for camps. I guess a super, super nice trade. I just want to back that up a second and have a look. Let's go back real quick. So it was a super nice trade. So I believe TF used his cooldown. Yeah, so TF doesn't have his W cooldown at the start of this. Gets a really nice trade. You see TF has no W response. So very good cooldown punish. And with the prior, is able to help kind of like hover to this crab. You know, like there's no way that crab can be contested by Diana with set as well as mid prior. So that's one thing, is if you do have two junglers that are kind of like likely to meet in the river, you know, some like farming / skirmishing junglers, it's like real easy to push because you're not likely to get ganked or receive ganks, and then you can use your priority to kind of help them out. Now, TF's in a bit of an awkward spot. He doesn't have TP, and he's also like fairly low. And Jace actually has like a fair amount more sustain, mainly in like terms of mana sustain. Can just like stay in hammer form, get a lot of CS that way. And also another thing is that TF kind of has to use his mana on the wave to shove stuff out. Whereas Jace doesn't really. Jace can just like auto the wave pretty much, save all the spells for harass onto TF. So yeah, this is like one thing that you'll see Chovy pretty much always do, and it is very important if you want to have really high CS. It's really important that you don't lose any CS when you're basing, and we'll see that a lot this game. So if you can manage to push waves in and then base, you know, kind of like what he does here, by doing this, he's able to base, and he's not going to lose any creeps on his recall. So this is really, really important. Actually, he's going to get his base stopped. Could be dead here, potentially. Or maybe has to flash. See how greedy he is. Oh, doesn't have flash from before. So actually, he is dead. Okay, so this is actually kind of interesting because he had a really good recall timing. Because his recall was slightly too greedy, he's actually going to lose a lot of creeps off it. So that's going to make this even more impressive, because he lost an entire wave there. An entire 6 CS that he would have had. So he's actually a bit lower CS than he could be, but he's still going to get up to that 12 CSPM mark at some point. So definitely something that you guys will be able to look to do as well. Now TF is based, TF is based, and Diana died. Probably going to look to pick up this kill on Aurelia. Not sure if he can actually get it. We'll see though. Ooh. Cleanses. Okay, looks like she's going to go down. Gets the shutdown. So in a pretty good spot at the moment. But you can see the CS at the moment is actually nothing crazy. 46 CS at 6 minutes. I mean, it's you know, fairly good, but it's nothing crazy. So the kind of like crazy CS is still yet to come. So now here's an important thing. So TF roam bot is going to lose a lot of creeps, and Jace can punish this quite hard. When this sort of stuff happens, when your opponent roams off tempo with it, like this, just look to punish mid. You can like deny a full wave like you did here, you know, maybe get a turret play while you're at it. And oftentimes you can make the roam like actually kind of good for you, like even if your opponent gets a kill. And another thing worth thinking about is that like there's no point roaming down the river if you can't get there in time anyway, you know, if you move too late. Now, used all its cooldowns on the wave here, so it was actually able to get zoned off by TF, which is pretty punishing. I think it lost like 3 creeps here. So it was pretty punishing the way he used his cooldowns. But ultimately does manage to kind of clear that wave out. Probably going to come up here and grab Honeyfruit, I think, to try and stay in lane a little bit longer. Does have a tier, so going to have like a fair amount of mana at least to stay in this lane. And this is, yeah, like these are the most important things for pretty much like keeping good CS, is like staying on the map for long periods of time. So any sustain in forms of HP or mana that you have is really, really helpful. And also not missing CS when you base. Those are the 2 biggest things in the early game at least. Later on, I think side laning is, and taking camps is a bit more important. Yeah, kills the TF, most likely just going to look to shove another wave pretty much as quickly as possible and then look for a base, or it could stay on the map. Actually be kind of interesting to see what he chooses to do here. So clears out this pink. I guess he's just going to nuke this wave and base, but I'm actually kind of curious to see if he stays in the map. Okay, bases. So he probably has like a fair amount of gold here. And also, again, it's like, if you don't base here, potentially you won't be able to base at a later time. Like right now, he's in a really good spot. He's got like HP sustain now with the Vamp Scepter, so he pretty much can't ever get moved out of lane by TF anymore. He's got essentially infinite mana regen as well as infinite HP regen, and it's very unlikely that TF will be able to get through that. You know, if you're versing a stronger poking champion, they might be able to like slowly whittle you down, but in this sort of matchup, it's not really the case. So starts walling up here, mainly just preventing TF from coming to this. I think Aurelia probably dies here. Yeah, so Aurelia dies, can look to go back mid. Might even farm blue on the way. Actually kind of, yeah, okay. So gonna farm blue on the way. It's quite efficient just to come take this right now. This is something that you might not be able to get away with in solo queue just because your jungler might get upset if you solo the blue. And also, there's not that many champs that can solo blue early. And again, like this is why like the champion, like which champion you play does have somewhat an effect on like how much CS you get. Obviously champs that can like do camps easier, stay on the map longer, strong 1v1, strong side laning, naturally have an easier time. That being said, like normally you can get at least 10 CSPM on pretty much any champ, but it's just like those ones where you want even more, you know, you're going for like 11 or 12 CSPM, then you really kind of need to be a bit more specific about your champion kind of choice. So able to run out from this gang, and you see this is where like another champion might actually have to base here, but because of the matchup and because of the sustain he has, is going to be able to stay on this map. And again, really important if you don't want to fall behind in CS at all, really important that you stay on the map for like really long periods of time. Obviously you want to look for like bases when you have a lot of gold, obviously, because otherwise you won't be pressuring the map, right? But equally important is not to just lose waves for free. And if you base one of these times and TF just pushes the wave under tower, you definitely be losing the wave for free when you don't really need to. So most likely you're going to keep pushing this in. Does have summons and cleanse, though doesn't have the best vision, but it's probably not a big deal. Again, like versus TF Diana, not the most threatening combo, especially if you have cleanse. Still kind of like standing close to the creeps that he can. And also, I think there is like, you could maybe call this method CSing, where he just like always QEs the backline. And that makes it pretty much impossible to miss. You know, he gets a guaranteed 3 at least, and then kind of like hammer forms the melees a lot of the time. So absolutely blasts that TF. And you can see now that despite him not having any refillable pots up, I'm pretty sure, when he got chunked before, he's actually back to full HP, pretty much just from all the sustain he has. And because he has blue and tier, literally infinite mana, can stay on the map as long as he wants. And I think it'll be interesting. I think like right now it's probably a good time to base. Normally you don't base with like full resources, but again, it's like if he doesn't base now, he might not get an opportunity to spend this gold, and he gets a full eclipse, right? And he manages to come back to lane, only loses 1 creep. So that's really good, right? If you can ever get bases like this, where you're basically losing nothing for it, it's very, very efficient and allows you to kind of like keep climbing up in that CS. And I think it's like also kind of important to see here that like he has 4 KP at the moment, and he's also like 110 CSP, 110 CS right now. So like, you don't just have to like be 0-0 or not do anything and get a lot of CS, especially if you're in like the winning position. You can make sure to get all the CS as well as like pressure the map a lot, as you'll see him do. So gonna likely get that turret plate. Boom. Okay, cleanses, nice cleanse. I actually thought they had a bit more damage there, but they actually have no damage with TF and Rel. So yeah, getting a lot of like kills and stuff, as well as like getting really snowballed. He has a ton of gold at the moment. He's taken like 3 turret plates. He's got 4 kills, and also he's like 100 and, well, he's about to be 120 CS here. So yeah, pretty crazy. But another thing I kind of want you guys to see here is that at 12 minutes, he's actually on the clock for CS. And this is why I think a lot of people kind of, this is where a lot of people like kind of mess up. Like, I think generally you guys can realize like how to be on the clock with your CS at this point. You know, it's mainly about smart bases, somewhat to do with your matchup, and also staying on the map, right? But this is pretty achievable, I would say, for everyone. You know, it's difficult, but it's definitely like within the realm of possibility. But I think after this point is where people start to struggle a lot more, you know, going from being on the clock with CS to kind of being down more, you know, rather than 10 CSPM, going down to maybe like 8 CSPM or something. But in the mid game is actually when Chovy starts to accelerate even more. So going from that 10 CSPM to that 12 CSPM. So we're going to kind of see how he does that here. Interesting, again, he's staying on the map. I think here he just wants to be here in order to secure this dragon. Again, he has enough resources that he can just stay on the map, doesn't really need to worry about basing at this point, and gets like a lot of priors, so can shove this in. Maybe even looks to hit the tower here. Yeah, I don't think the Samir is very threatening. Getting a lot of autos on this tower. It's going to be a lot of gold when that goes down. Get some chunk on a Samira. Some honey fruit, stay on the map a bit longer. This is another thing, I've already kind of mentioned it, but just be really aware of like what you lose for basing and how often you base. Base timings are like super, super important and not talked about enough. But yeah, base timings have a massive impact on the game at pretty much every stage of the game as well. So very important that you think about them a lot. So now you can see he's starting to pull ahead in CS. While it's okay, I think it's fine to miss CS earlier in the game. By this point, there should be no way you're missing any CS, mainly because you're so strong that you just like guarantee you get all the CS on the wave, you know? Unless you fall behind at this point, it's just so easy for you to kill waves. You know, in the early game, you don't have as much AD. You know, you might not have whatever wave clear spells at the right level in order to kind of method CS. But when you're like getting fed like this, it's really easy just to literally get every CS on every wave. And I think like another kind of general benchmark you guys could have is after say 10 minutes, you should think that like it's pretty unacceptable to miss CS after that point. Obviously you are going to miss like a couple here and there, right? But you're not going to miss many. Now, here he can't really go bot. The reason is that his jungler is doing Herald, so bot would be extremely weak side. If he walks bot, he probably gets dived. So while it would be nice to go bot and collect all this farm, he's kind of forced to share waves on the mid wave until Rumble completes Herald and then pass back down. So this is something that doesn't happen that often in lower elos, but in high elos, being like aware of like what is weak side and what is strong side is very, very important. So you can see now like Dyna path back top, Rumble pass back bot, and now this is the strong side, which means he's going to look to take whatever camps he can, as well as like push the side wave as far as he is able to. He takes his camp after clearing the waves, so very, very efficient here. And is going to, I think, look to push this really far. You can see that his team is like hovering down on the bot side of the map, so he should feel very, very safe to push this wave all the way up to tower. And now you can see him really starting to pull ahead in CS. So it's mainly because now he clears waves so fast that he has time to do camps as well. And also, again, like really important that he's not just missing CS for free. I think missing CS for free is actually pretty common in the mid game because people are like a little impatient or they're not thinking about how to like CS the wave a little like bit more carefully. But it's still really important in the mid game that you actually are getting all the CS on this wave, or on these waves, and a lot of the time he doesn't leave it up to chance. As you can see, he kills most of these before his creeps even touch them. So now at a 60 CS lead, 20 CS above the clock, so looking at that 11 CSPM mark now, pushes the wave all the way under the tower, has the choice to either pressure the tower or look to harass mid instead. As it comes to harass mid, decides he can't really do anything on bot. Actually not sure he can do anything here except poke, but then he does get a kill on Samira. Actually, okay, he gets a lot of kills here. But there wasn't really anything for him to do bot anyway. Like, could he really hit the tower when TF was right there? I don't really think so. Gonna push this all the way in. Just, like, again, taking what farm he can here. And I actually think now is kind of interesting. I think he probably should go back bot. So I guess, like, the bot wave is pushing to him, so he doesn't have to answer it immediately. Like, he can wait for this to be at his tower. So he could be extremely greedy, maybe take those mid waves and go bot. Looks like Set's gonna go bot instead though, so I'm guessing he just goes for a base. Yep, so goes for a base here. Must have a lot of gold at this point, not quite sure how much. And you'll likely see him deploy to the top side of the map here, mainly because this is like the wave he can play to. Rumble's top side, sets bot side, so he's got his jungler hugging to him, sets on the other side of the map. Looks like he's going to try to take his jungler's Grump in front of him. Okay, nope, decides to give it up. That's pretty funny. Would be a very Chovy thing to do, to just take that Grump like an absolute Giga Chad. Now, coming top, and going to be pushing this wave. Now, the only kind of problem with this is that I believe Dragon is spawning quite soon. So he's consciously deciding to give Dragon here in favor of more farm. I actually think he just kills this guy, right? Sonya's... Oh, like, he did a lot of damage. Okay, so here, it was kind of an interesting macro decision. I feel like most of the time in solo queue, you would just play for that Dragon, but he's very confident that whatever he can get top is worth more than what he can get for that drag. And as you can see, like now his CS is starting to approach like the 30 above the clock moment here. And again, look how low he is on HP and how he's going to sustain back to full. So if you do want to go for those really, really high CS numbers above just like the 10 CS per minute, it's really, really important that you can stay on the map for long periods of time. Other champions would have to base there, but because he has a ton of mana and a ton of HP sustain, he's able to just like stay on the map and keep pressuring despite the fact that it is 1 HP. And that's something that's like, again, people don't really think about, but it's definitely a strength that a lot of champions have that just isn't talked about kind of as much as it should be. So here, going to clear mid on the way to bot. So this drag is still up, so he decides to move to it. Top was pushed pretty far out, so he does have like some time here. I think if Aurelia keeps going top, he probably will lose some creeps, but ultimately it's like, you have to strike a balance between just like farming as many creeps as possible and still pressuring the map. So here he decides that like, you know, coming to this dragon fight is likely worth more than whatever he gets top. And either way, he's still like really, really strong, right? Still 30 CS above the clock. Gonna take this dragon here. Maybe last hit it for the creeps. Yep. So he gets plus 4 CS from the dragon as well. Make sure to always last hit dragons. It does make your CS a bit higher. Gonna push out this wave as well. Everyone's pretty much dead, so I imagine that he's gonna push in this wave pretty much all the way and then take the enemy jungle camps. So you can kind of see how like, if you do get the kind of like perfect scenario where he wins 1v1, he has a lot of sustain, you know, he's got the vision, he can play like super, super aggressively on the side lane and take a lot of camps. Like I think here, yeah, probably just take this Grump and the blue. I don't think there's anyone that can really contest him for it, given the Rel and Diana are still dead. So this is another like plus 8 CS here. And yeah, so after this blue, this is the 240 CS at 20 minutes or just before 20 minutes, and that is 12 CSPM. So very, very impressive, right? He's up 100 CS above his opponent. Like insanely strong, level 15 at 20 minutes, when the next highest level was like, what, level 12? Yeah, level 12 is the highest I can see. So that's like an absolutely insane lead. And I want you guys to kind of see that like he didn't really sacrifice his team to do this. He pressured the map really, really well and just like moved around with really like insane, or just like, yeah, really strong fundamentals. And that led him to having just like a crazy, crazy lead. So I believe the game does just end about here. So let's kind of talk about this. I'm just going to TLDR this in a second as soon as this game ends. Okay, game ends here. So let's kind of talk about this. So in my opinion, the kind of TLDR for this, first off is like the actual champion choice. So if you want 12 CSPM as opposed to like 10 CSPM, your champion choice is quite important. You need to have a winning matchup, I would say, a strong 1v1 in the side lane. So just, there's a lot of strong 1v1 side laners from mid, you know, like LeBlanc's, Silas, Akali, Aurelia, you know, there's a lot of them. There's like way more than that. There's probably like about 20 or 30. So that's like kind of an easier choice. I also think having some form of sustain or having like the ability to stay on the map for a long time. So that can either mean that like, yeah, you have sustain or you just don't use many resources. So like you might have really low mana cost, or you might just have a giant mana pool, like in the case of Rise or something, and allow you to kind of like stay on the map, keep farming, keep pressuring for long periods of time. So that's kind of the champion choice. Then for kind of the sections of the game, I think the early game, the main things are, if you can, like try not to just miss CS for free, but most importantly is actually, most important is the base timing. So making sure that you always shove the wave in and don't really lose creeps for your base at max. If you are going for this like really high CS, you should only be losing a couple CS on your base. As opposed to losing a full wave. And a lot of the time, if you're in a bad matchup, you won't get the choice, right? Like, unless you have your jungler help you. So that's why it is kind of important to have these, like, stronger laning champs in order to do this. And again, to reiterate, this is if you want to go above 10 CSPM. Not something that you can achieve every game by any means. Even Chovy doesn't do that. But certainly something you can aim for. So that was the early game. In the mid game, it's mainly about pushing that side lane as far as you can, taking whatever camps you can, and kind of just like moving around the map somewhat efficiently, you know, setting up a little like circuit of taking like top wave, camp, more top waves, more camps, just like going round and round like that, but still managing to kind of group with your team at those key points when you do get the opportunity to. So I think that's it for this video. Hopefully I kind of gave you guys a little bit of insight into how Chovy does achieve these like really high CS numbers. I would say Chovy does have the strongest farming fundamentals in the world. So definitely a player that's worth learning from in terms of just like CSing at basically any stage of the game. Hopefully it was helpful for you guys. Let me know if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.